Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Okay, so we're diving deep today.
Yeah.
And, we've got a whole pile of your search terms this time, and they're all about women's college basketball.
Yeah.
Specifically around UConn and South Carolina.
Lots of interest there.
Yeah, so our mission, I guess, is to kind of like figure out, what are the big stories hiding in these searches?
Yeah.
What players are you all really interested in? What's the bigger picture? Why is everybody so into women's March Madness right now?
Absolutely. And I got to say, the variety in these searches, it's pretty amazing. I think it really gives us like a snapshot of, what fans are thinking about. You've got folks trying to predict who's going to win certain games. Others are really digging into the backgrounds of these players. And then there's a whole bunch of you looking back at, championships and all that history. It's a really interesting mix.
Yeah, it is. And one thing just jumps out right away. It's like UConn versus South Carolina. That's like the
For big rivalry.
The big rivalry.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're seeing UConn versus South Carolina. South Carolina versus UConn over and over again. And then there are even some very specific searches like where to watch South Carolina Gamecocks, women's basketball versus UConn Huskies, women's basketball.
Wow.
It's like this is the matchup that everybody is waiting for.
Yeah, it does seem like a game, doesn't it? And what's really interesting to me is how much these two teams are linked to winning the whole thing. Like when we look at how many searches mention women's final or women's national championship, and they almost always mention one of these two teams. You know what I mean? It really seems like everyone just assumes that they're going to be the ones battling it out in the end.
It's like the championship fight that's been building all season.
Exactly.
And speaking of big names, Paige Bueckers is like shining bright in these searches.
Oh, yeah. She's huge.
We see a ton of questions like, where is Paige Bueckers from? How many points did Paige Bueckers score today? Even has Paige Bueckers won a national championship? There's like a real fascination with her.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, it's like a testament to how important individual players have become in, building fan excitement.
Yeah.
She's this incredible talent. And it seems like she's bringing in even people who don't normally watch women's basketball.
Right. It's not just about her skills on the court either. It's her whole story that people are interested in.
Definitely. Yeah. It's like she's this main character that everyone's following.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And she's not the only UConn player getting attention. We're seeing Ati Fudd UConn a bunch of times. So clearly people are making that connection. Then there's Sarah Strong. And Sarah Strong UConn, another name that's popping up a lot for UConn fans.
Right.
Caitlin Chen and Aaliyah Edwards are also mentioned in connection with UConn. It seems like there's a real deep interest in that whole roster. It's not just about the superstar.
Yeah, totally. I think these searches tell us that fans really, understand and appreciate all the different players on the team and how they fit together. It's not just about one person.
Right.
And then on the South Carolina side, maybe we don't see the same like individual player names popping up quite as much as with Bueckers. But when we look at all the searches for Gamecock women basketball or Gamecocks women's basketball, it's clear that there's a ton of interest in that team as a whole. And, players like KK Arnold, Camila Cardoso, Malaysia, Full Wiley, they're all implied in those team searches. And, of course, Dawn Staley's name comes up, too, which is, a huge testament to her impact.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, though, why do you think the search patterns might be a little different for these two teams? Like the focus on individual players for UConn versus the more team-centric searches for South Carolina?
That's a great question. Maybe it has something to do with the different ways these teams are playing, or maybe even the way the media talks about them. South Carolina has been so successful under Coach Staley. Maybe that makes people focus more on the whole team, the collective effort. And then with UConn, maybe Bueckers' journey and her return from injury, that's a really strong story. And maybe that's driving all the individual searches.
Right. That makes sense.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting that both of these teams are clearly generating so much excitement.
Yeah, for sure. And then, shifting gears a little bit, a lot of these searches are all about the tournament itself. We're seeing NCAA Women's Championship, NCAA Women's Final Four, NCAA Basketball Tournament, and, of course, all the variations of Women's March Madness. It's like people really invested in the whole experience.
Yeah, totally. And I think that makes sense when you think about it. March Madness is this huge event. It's when even people who don't usually watch college basketball tune in, and these searches are reflecting that, the drama and the excitement of the tournament. It's like the peak of the whole season.
And people aren't just thinking about this here either. We see searches like Shunka National Championship 2025 and Sunshut Tournament 2025, which I think is pretty cool. Like, folks are already looking ahead.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then there are the questions about when is Sunshut Championship game? When is the National Championship game? It's like people are planning their viewing schedules.
Yeah.
We even saw Sunshut women's basketball today and some searches mentioning specific dates. It's like a real-time connection to the games.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Information is so accessible these days. Fans want to know the scores and everything as soon as it happens.
Exactly.
And I think the number of searches for scores really shows just how emotionally invested people are in these games.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then beyond the current season and the results, there's a real interest in the history of these programs, too. We're seeing searches like, who won Women's March Madness 2024? UConn Women's Basketball Championships, UConn Women's National Championships. Last time UConn Women won National Championship. It's like people are trying to understand the bigger picture, the historical context.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that context is really important, because it helps us understand the rivalry that's happening right now. Like, UConn has this amazing dynasty, and then South Carolina has become this dominant force more recently. So it's kind of like this story of, tradition versus this new power, and fans want to know where these teams have come from so they can appreciate where they are now and what might happen in the future.
Right, exactly. And then, something else that I think is really encouraging is that it's not just about UConn and South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
We're also seeing a lot of broader interest in women's basketball as a whole, like general terms, like your women's basketball, women's college basketball, girls college basketball, even women's basketball NCAA,
right?
Women's Concho basketball.
So many variations.
So many variations. Yeah, women's college basketball, women NCAA basketball, women's basketball team, women's basketball championship. Like, it seems like there's just this growing audience for the sport in general.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's such a good sign. It means that the sport is growing beyond just one rivalry, increased media coverage, all these amazing storylines, and just the incredible athleticism that we're seeing on the court. It's all coming together to bring in more fans. I think it's a really positive development.
Yeah. And then we also see Gigi Bryant and Vanessa Bryant in these searches, which is interesting. It makes you think about the broader cultural impact of women's basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people who have championed the sport. And then we see Chiny Ogle Mike, too, which shows an interest in these prominent figures in the sport, both past and present.
Right. And I think those searches really highlight how, women's basketball is more than just the games themselves. It's about the stories, the cultural impact, and these individuals who have made such a huge difference.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny, but in the middle of all this focus on women's basketball, there's this one single mention of UConn Huskies men's basketball versus South Carolina Gamecocks men's basketball. So it's a little outlier.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? Maybe it's someone who follows both the men's and women's programs and sees some kind of connection, or maybe even like a friendly rivalry across both.
Right. Yeah. It's just this little glimpse into, how some people experience college sports.
Totally.
Okay, so let's kind of pull all this together. When you look at all of these searches, what are the big takeaways for you?
Well, the main thing is definitely the rivalry between UConn and South Carolina. It's clearly captivating a lot of people's attention and driving a huge amount of these searches, and then fueling that rivalry are these incredible players, especially Paige Bueckers, who's clearly a fan favorite.
Yeah, and the NCAA tournament is like the stage for all of this. People aren't just watching the regular season games. They're following these teams through March Madness, checking the schedules, finding out how to watch the games, and, just obsessively checking the scores.
Absolutely. And then beneath all the excitement is this deep respect for the history of these programs. Fans are looking back at past championships and the legacies that UConn and South Carolina have built. And that gives, this extra layer of meaning to their games today.
Right. And I think maybe the most encouraging thing is that this isn't just about two teams. It's about the growth of women's college basketball in general. It seems like there's a whole new wave of fans who are discovering the sport. And, that's really exciting.
Totally. And all the different ways people are searching for information about women's basketball, that tells me that the audience is becoming more knowledgeable and more enthusiastic. And that's just fantastic for the future of the sport.
So when we look at all these searches about specific players and the history of these two amazing programs, What does that tell us about the role of rivalries and star players in women's college sports? Are they really changing the game? Are they bringing in more fans and more attention?
That's the big question, isn't it? Are these intense rivalries and these amazing players like Buchers, are they creating a deeper connection with fans, a connection that's going to last and, help women's college sports continue to grow and get the recognition it deserves? It definitely feels like we're seeing a real shift in how fans are experiencing women's basketball. And I think the focus on individual players and the excitement of these rivalries, it could be a really powerful force for the sport moving forward.
Yeah, definitely some interesting things to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure.
And we'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.
Today is your lucky day. Today is the day that our $3 website works for you, paying you directly to your PayPal daily. Imagine $3 ongoing continuous payments to your PayPal account. Imagine falling asleep and waking up to $300 in your PayPal account. How would this make you feel? How could this help you? What bills could you pay? What kind of fun could you have? What does that retirement look like now? All for a one-time payment of $3. This website is DFY done for you, fully built and completely hosted, and never stops collecting payments for you. You have spent $3 on coffee on a regular, but that coffee won't help you create multiple streams of income. Click the link below.